say the men hid the fact that Paislee and her mom were living in Senior's home for 2 years, while pretending that the mom and daughter were missing and that the father and grandfather had no idea where they might be. Saugerties police made repeated visits to the Shultis home, even looking around inside, but always leaving empty-handed, until a tip gave them probable cause to get a warrant. And during a search Monday night, a sharp-eyed cop noticed something wrong with the basement stairs. They pulled the stair up and they found Paislee hiding in a secret space with her mom, Kimberly Cooper. Police believe the girl had been living in the home, not attending school for 2 years, and then hiding in that secret space whenever police arrived. The parents temporarily lost custody in 2019.
Dozens of times, police scoured the house, only to come up empty-handed. For nearly 3 years, the little girl seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth, but this time, a seasoned detective's intuition told him something was off beneath the enclosed wooden staircase. A flashlight beam, piercing through a dark crack, revealed a wet blanket. Prying up the floorboards, a shocking truth emerged. The missing girl was huddled underneath. The most astonishing part, the 6-year-old child had remained completely silent for 4 straight hours, right beneath the officer's feet. Why? In July 2019, 4-year-old Paislee Shultis seemingly vanished from the face of the earth. Following a bitter custody dispute, she disappeared without a single trace from Cayuga Heights, New York. For nearly 3 years, the investigation yielded nothing but dead ends. Missing person flyers faded on neighborhood storefronts, and the trail grew agonizingly cold. Authorities tirelessly pursued every available lead, yet the little girl remained a ghost. It was a baffling mystery that left a community holding its breath, waiting for an answer that felt like it might never come. Then, on a chilling evening in February 2000, a sudden spark reignited the frozen case. An unexpected, anonymous tip deemed highly credible by investigators directed police to a specific residence in Saugerties, New York. It was a house the authorities were already deeply familiar with, owned by the child's grandfather. Officers had knocked on that very door dozens of times over the years, only to be met with firm denials and strictly limited access. Every previous search had ended in frustration, but this time, armed with a fresh search warrant and a resolute determination, as investigators methodically swept through the property, the atmosphere was incredibly tense. The residents were remarkably calm, acting with the practiced confidence of people who had successfully turned the authorities away many times before. Hours ticked by. The search was dragging on, and it appeared this might just be another fruitless endeavor. However, one seasoned investigator's attention was continually drawn to a peculiar architectural detail leading down to the basement. The staircase was entirely enclosed with solid wood panels, a strange design choice for a standard basement entry, which typically features open risers or plain concrete steps. It felt far too sturdy, too deliberately constructed to hide whatever lay beneath. Recalling the pivotal moment of the search to Global News, the local police chief described the investigators' sharp instincts.
Detective Eric Thiel, one of my detectives, walked up and down the steps a number of times during the course of the search, and he said there was just something about the steps that was off. It didn't feel right, it didn't look right. He took a closer examination of it. It struck him funny that these stairs that come off a set of Bilko doors at the backside of the residence that go into the basement, they were encased, they were closed in. And normally those type stairs are either made of concrete, or if they're made of wood, there's no risers and you can see behind the staircase. In this case, you couldn't. And it was built pretty solid. He used a flashlight, and where 2 of the step boards came together, he looked through the crack and he saw what he believed was a blanket. So they used a halogen tool to start removing the stair steps from the staircase itself. And then eventually they saw a pair of little feet, and when they got more boards off, they found the little girl Paislee and her biological mother Kimberly Cooper hiding in that location.
That single beam of light piercing through the narrow wooden crevices changed everything. A blanket had no logical reason to be stuffed beneath a securely sealed staircase. Urgency immediately filled the air. Utilizing a heavy-duty forcible entry tool, the officers began the tense task of prying the wooden treads apart. The boards groaned and splintered as they were pulled away one by one, revealing a dark makeshift compartment hidden entirely from the outside world. It was a cold, incredibly damp, and unlit space. As the aperture widened, the heavy wet blankets were pulled aside, and a pair of tiny feet finally came into view. Against all odds, hidden in the shadows right beneath the floorboards, the missing little girl had been found. When investigators arrived at the Saugerties residence that fateful Monday evening, They were not met with the panicked resistance typical of cornered individuals. Instead, they were greeted by the chilling, almost arrogant calmness of Paislee's father and her grandfather. Their demeanor was a masterclass in deception, a spectacular charade that had kept the truth buried for nearly 3 years. There was no visible anxiety, no stammering, and no hesitation. They permitted the officers to enter the home with the relaxed, dismissive confidence of men who had flawlessly executed this exact routine dozens of times before. To the residents, the arrival of law enforcement was no longer a crisis. It was merely a temporary, predictable nuisance to be managed and outsmarted. This unshakable composure wasn't just an improvised facade. It was a hardened armor built from years of successful evasion. They had effectively conditioned the local authorities to conduct cursory searches, find absolutely nothing, and politely leave. Reflecting on the sheer audacity and overconfidence of the homeowners, Police Chief Joseph Sinagra later recalled their unyielding attitude during the tense operation.
They were adamant with our officers that the child was not there, that Kimberly was not there, that we weren't going to find anything. And that's so, which led me to believe after the fact that they had done this so many times and gotten away with it, they just figured that we would give up after a while and leave.
Their hubris acted as a psychological shield intended to gaslight the detectives into doubting the credibility of their own hidden informant. However, the most insidious element of their deception lay hidden in the architecture itself. The enclosed makeshift space discovered beneath the basement stairs was profoundly misunderstood at first glance. It was not constructed to be a permanent full-time living quarters for the mother and daughter. The dark, unventilated, and bitterly cold enclosure was simply too small to sustain daily life. Instead, it was meticulously designed as a rapid deployment invisibility cloak, a tactical hiding spot, utilized exclusively when the outside world came uncomfortably close. Above ground, the home maintained an illusion of normalcy, reportedly featuring a standard bedroom, with the child's name and even a backyard playset. The true darkness of this spectacular charade is found in the mechanics of the evasion. The existence of this specific concealed compartment implies a deeply unsettling reality, a highly rehearsed, silent drill. For over 1,000 days, the adults maintained a state of hypervigilance. At the very first sign of an approaching police cruiser, or the sudden sound of a knock at the front door, a terrifying routine was instantly triggered. Paislee and her mother would be swiftly ushered into the damp void beneath the steps. The heavy wooden treads would be seamlessly sealed shut above them, instantly erasing their physical existence from the property. The men would then smoothly transition into their roles as bewildered cooperative homeowners, perfectly performing a script of innocence, while a little girl held her breath in the absolute dark, mere inches beneath the detective's boots. The physical rescue of little Paislee brought an overwhelming wave of relief, yet it simultaneously introduced a profoundly unsettling psychological mystery. For nearly 4 hours, officers had walked heavily across the floorboards, their boots thudding mere inches above the little girl's head. In any normal scenario, a 6-year-old child confined in a cold, damp, pitch-black space would cry out, whimper, or at least shift nervously, betraying their location. Yet Paislee remained completely motionless and utterly silent. How does a child so young master such absolute, statue-like stillness amidst the overwhelming chaos of a law enforcement search? The answer points to a deeply troubling psychological conditioning. To keep a child that quiet for that long, the adults in her life had to construct a terrifying narrative about the outside world. Society teaches children that if they are lost or scared, they should immediately look for a police officer for help. For Paislee, that fundamental safety net was completely inverted. She must have been taught that the people in uniform walking above her were a grave threat. In her isolated world, the authorities were painted not as rescuers, but as a danger she had to hide from at all costs. This psychological void where protectors are feared and a cold, dark crevice is deemed safe highlights the immense mental toll of her prolonged isolation. Her silence was not a simple game of hide and seek. It was a survival mechanism born from deeply ingrained fear and a distorted reality. She had missed out on vital educational milestones, learning instead how to disappear on command. However, beneath the heavy layers of fear and years of isolation, the pure, resilient spirit of a little girl miraculously remained intact. The transition from the suffocating darkness of the staircase to the safety of a police cruiser marked the beginning of her return to the real world. As they drove away from the Saugerties' home, a beautifully simple moment pierced through the heavy emotional weight of the evening. It was a glimpse of innocent normalcy that deeply moved the seasoned officers. Looking out the window of the patrol car, the 6-year-old caught sight of a familiar glowing sign illuminating the night sky. Recounting the emotional car ride, a News Nation reporter detailed the heartwarming exchange.
We're driving past McDonald's on 212. She got all excited and she said, "Is that a McDonald's?" And the detective said, "Yes, it is." And she said, I remember I liked McDonald's food. I haven't had it in so long." The detective just turned right around and went right back to McDonald's and went through the drive-thru and picked up Paislee a meal and brought her back to headquarters. Yeah.
In that split second, the terrified girl who had been trained to hold her breath in the shadows transformed back into a regular kid craving a simple meal. That quick drive-through detour was more than just getting food. It was her very first taste of freedom, a warm golden ray of light signaling that her days of hiding in the dark were finally over. While the safe recovery of the 6-year-old brought a collective sigh of relief, the subsequent legal developments quickly ignited a firestorm of public outrage. The transition from a dramatic, tension-filled rescue to the stark reality of the courtroom left many observers feeling entirely baffled by the justice system. For an act that involved meticulously hiding a child in a dark, damp void for nearly 3 years, depriving her of an education, proper care, and a normal childhood, the public expected swift and severe consequences. Instead, the charges handed down to the 3 responsible adults presented a glaring, infuriating contradiction that immediately sparked intense debate and disbelief. At the center of this controversy is the stark disparity in how the law categorized their offenses. The mother, who was physically found hiding in the confined space alongside the child, was charged with custodial interference and endangering the welfare of a child. Astoundingly, both of these charges were classified merely as misdemeanors, a legal category typically reserved for much less severe infractions. Conversely, the father and the grandfather faced felony charges for custodial interference, alongside the same misdemeanor endangerment charge. This disproportionate allocation of justice immediately raises glaring questions that resonate deeply with anyone following the case. How can a system justify giving a lighter legal classification to one of the primary architects of the concealment? All 3 adults were undeniably complicit in the grand deception. They collectively designed the evasion tactic, they all participated in maintaining the elaborate facade, and they all repeatedly lied to law enforcement officers, who stood right in their living room. They functioned as a unified front to orchestrate a vanishing act that stole a critical developmental window from a young girl's life. Yet, the legal framework somehow weighed their culpability differently, leaving the public struggling to understand the logic behind handing out a misdemeanor for such a profound level of calculated evasion. The frustration reached an absolute boiling point with how the immediate aftermath was handled. Despite the gravity of the situation and the thousands of hours spent deceiving the authorities, the father and grandfather were not remanded into custody. Instead, they were simply issued appearance tickets and allowed to walk right out of the police station, returning to the very community and the very house where they had executed their grand illusion. The mother remained incarcerated, but only due to an entirely separate pre-existing warrant, not because the system deemed her actions in this specific case severe enough to deny bail. For a community that had spent years sharing missing person flyers and hoping for a safe return, watching the perpetrators casually walk free with a piece of paper, demanding a future court date felt like a profound miscarriage of justice. It begs the ultimate question for the audience. Does this legal outcome adequately reflect the severity of erasing a child from society for 1,000 days? This glaring loophole in accountability turns a miraculous rescue into a stark, infuriating commentary on the blind spots of the legal system. The public outrage surrounding the Paislee Shultis case did not stop at the courtroom steps. It was heavily fueled by the astonishing public statements made by local law enforcement. When an investigation uncovers a child hidden away from the world in a dark, damp crevice, the public rightfully expects complete, uncompromising condemnation from the authorities. However, the official narrative immediately following the rescue took a shockingly empathetic turn toward the perpetrators. This unexpected response exposed a massive systemic blind spot in how the legal and child welfare systems view the true scope of a child's well-being. Following the dramatic extraction, the local police chief addressed the media with a statement that left true crime commentators and the community utterly speechless. He confirmed that the 6-year-old was in good health and good spirits, which was undoubtedly a relief, but he then explicitly added that the police did not believe she was mistreated in any way. This specific choice of words represents a profound failure of terminology. It reduces a child's safety to a mere medical checklist, completely ignoring the invisible psychological scars of prolonged concealment. Let's break down what this supposed lack of mistreatment actually looked like. This little girl was routinely shoved into a freezing wet void beneath a staircase, forced to hold her breath in absolute darkness for hours, while armed officers walked above her. Furthermore, she had been entirely erased from society during her most critical developmental years. At 6 years old, an age when children are supposed to be discovering the world, making friends and learning the alphabet, She had never attended a single day of school. She could not read. She could not write. She was deprived of education, peer interaction, and the basic freedom of a normal childhood. Classifying this massive educational and developmental deprivation as not mistreated sets a terrifyingly low bar for what constitutes a safe environment. Before we dive into the most controversial statement made by the authorities, if you are just as frustrated by these legal loopholes and want to uncover the psychological depths behind cases like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Here at Crime Cases LAB, we don't just read the headlines, we analyze the hidden layers of true crime, the mindsets of the perpetrators, and the flaws within the justice system that allow them to slip through the cracks. Join our community to stay updated on the most mind-bending investigations. The chief's comments, however, went even further, crossing a line that sparked widespread fury across social media and news networks. He actually expressed a desire to see the family unit restored, stating on camera, "I am hoping that sometime in the future, that the family has learned from this, that eventually the family will gain the right to actually get the custody of their kids." This sentiment highlights the ultimate loophole in the system's logic. It treats the systematic, calculated concealment of a human being complete with hidden trapdoors, coordinated alibis, and years of rehearsed lies as a simple parenting mistake that can be remedied with a few counseling sessions. It equates a highly orchestrated vanishing act to a minor household deficiency. This perspective poses a dangerous question for society. How many chances do perpetrators truly deserve? When a family invests more time, effort, and money into building a secret compartment to dodge the law than into providing a child with an education and a life in the light, suggesting a future reunion feels like a betrayal of the victim. It leaves the public wondering if the justice system is genuinely designed to protect the most vulnerable, or if it is simply wired to forgive the unforgivable, prioritizing biological ties over a child's fundamental right to a safe, visible life. To truly understand the depths of this calculated evasion, we must look backward at the circumstances that originally triggered the loss of custody in 2019. The narrative presented by the adults was often one of hardship and struggle, but statements from those who knew them intimately paint a remarkably contradictory picture. An exclusive interview with the family's former babysitter peeled back the layers of their domestic life, revealing a staggering level of hypocrisy that makes the concealment under the stairs even more infuriating to comprehend. According to the babysitter's accounts, the parents frequently complained about their financial inability to afford basic childcare. They claimed they were completely broke and unable to pay for proper daytime supervision for Paislee and her older sister. This financial instability and the resulting chaotic schedule were cited as major contributing factors in the court's initial decision to remove the children and grant legal guardianship to their grandmother. The system stepped in because the caretakers presented themselves as entirely incapable of providing the fundamental, everyday resources required to raise a child safely. However, a closer examination of their actual lifestyle exposes a massive, glaring irony. While they protested that a simple daycare fee was entirely out of reach, they simultaneously commanded significant financial resources in other areas of their lives. The father, it turns out, was not a helpless, destitute worker. He owned and operated his own private paving company in upstate New York. Running a commercial paving business is no small feat. It requires substantial capital. It involves purchasing or leasing massive, heavy-duty commercial trucks, maintaining expensive industrial equipment, paying for custom business signage, and covering massive fuel costs. They were visibly funding a high-overhead business operation, traveling to job sites late into the night, yet somehow, the relatively modest cost of ensuring their daughters were safe and educated during the day was deemed utterly impossible. The ultimate contradiction, however, lies in the very structure that hid the little girl from the world. Constructing a secret, undetectable bunker is not a cheap or easy undertaking. Building that custom, heavy-duty enclosed staircase required high-quality lumber, specialized tools, expensive hardware, and an immense amount of time and dedicated labor. They essentially financed and engineered a customized architectural project, specifically designed to outsmart law enforcement. Let that profound irony sink in. When it came to investing in their child's visible developmental future, paying for a babysitter, ensuring she had a daily routine, allowing her to interact with a world their pockets were supposedly empty. But when it came to investing in a master plan of deception, the resources magically appeared without hesitation. They had the funds to sustain commercial vehicles and construct an elaborate architectural illusion, but they refused to invest a single dime into giving their daughter a normal life in the light. This stark contrast completely shatters any lingering sympathy for the adults involved. It removes the false narrative of the struggling, desperate parents who made a mistake out of poverty. Instead, it exposes a highly calculated set of priorities. They prioritized their own control and evasion over the fundamental needs of a growing child. The enclosed staircase was not a symbol of desperation. It was a monument to their misplaced resources and overwhelming selfishness, built by hands that refused to provide the bare minimum for a child's education and well-being. After navigating the infuriating complexities of the legal system and the sheer audacity of the deception, the core of this incredible story ultimately returns to a place of hope. Today, the darkness of that enclosed staircase is firmly behind Paislee Shultis. Following her dramatic extraction, medical professionals thoroughly evaluated her and remarkably found her to be in good physical health. The most heartwarming chapter of this entire saga unfolded shortly after that unforgettable detour to the McDonald's drive-thru. Paislee was finally taken to a secure location and safely reunited with her legal guardian, her grandmother, who had spent years waiting and hoping for her return. Even more touching was her reunion with her now 16-year-old sister. Despite the immense passage of time and the isolation she endured, Paislee still remembered her older sibling, proving that the bond of true family and the resilience of a child's spirit can survive even the deepest shadows. While we celebrate this miraculous recovery, Paislee's story serves as a profound and chilling cautionary tale. It forces us to confront a terrifying hypothetical scenario. What if the police had simply knocked on the door, asked their routine questions, and walked away just like they had dozens of times before? If not for one crucial turning point, Paislee might have remained a ghost, completely erased from society, forced to grow up in the damp confinement of a hidden void. That turning point was not a piece of highly sophisticated forensic evidence, nor was it a brilliant stroke of investigative deduction. It was something much simpler, yet infinitely more powerful. An anonymous tip. The entire house of cards built by the adults came crashing down because someone, somewhere, noticed something that did not add up and made the courageous decision to speak out. We may never know the identity of the person who picked up the phone that fateful February day. It could have been an observant neighbor who caught a fleeting glimpse of a child's silhouette, a distant acquaintance who heard a suspicious remark, or simply a stranger whose conscience could no longer bear the weight of a dark secret. Regardless of who they are, that anonymous informant is the absolute unsung hero of this narrative. Their single brave action underscores a vital lesson that resonates through every investigation we examine here at Crime Cases LAB. Community vigilance saves lives. In a world where people are often encouraged to mind their own business and look the other way, this story is a powerful reminder that our collective awareness is the ultimate safety net for the most vulnerable among us. When an innocent child is forcibly hidden from the light, it is the duty of society to actively look for them. Paislee's journey from a cold, hidden compartment to the warm embrace of her actual family proves that no secret can remain buried forever if people are willing to pay attention. It demonstrates that the silence of evasion can always be shattered by the voice of a concerned citizen. Sometimes, the difference between an unsolved mystery and a joyful reunion hinges entirely on the courage of a stranger. As we close the file on this extraordinary rescue, let it be a lasting reminder for all of us. If you see something, say something. A single moment of speaking up holds the incredible power to rewrite a tragedy and hand a child back their entire future.